Hi guys, this is Abby from Witchcraft Criminal History. How you doing today? Hopefully you're doing well. We're continuing with our video in regards to Jack the Ripper. In part one, I talked a little bit about the conditions of what life was like in 1888. The second one was primarily about the suspects, and there's still plenty more to know about the suspects, so we're continuing with that. Okay. The interesting thing about, the suspects is that there is a multitude, as I said in the first one. One thing I did forget to mention in regards to Holmes in part 2 was that there was only one crime, which could be plausible, because we do know that Holmes didn't travel to the UK on his own. He was with an accomplice. And with Liz Stride. Liz Stride there was actually a witness of the assault on Liz Stride. And this was, and I think it was a Polish Jew. And he saw two men there. He saw one person grabbing Liz Stride from the back of the shoulders, shoving her down, to the ground. And with the autopsy photos, they found that she had severe bruising on her knees, as if she was shoved down, just like this Polish Jew had stated to the police. But there was two of them there. There was one person assaulting Liz Stride, with another person who was fitting Holmes's description. If you look at the sketch, there's actually a sketch of Jack the Ripper. You put that sketch right next door to H.H. Holmes, they look very much nearly identical. And he shouted at the Polish Jew, Lipski. Back in 1888, Lipski is an insult. It's an insult you would give to a Jew. And because the simple fact was that about 5 to 10 years prior to 1888, so this was in the 1870s, there was a Polish Jew by the name of Lipski who was hanged for murder. And so the name Lipski became an insult to Polish Jews. And that's where we get the compository sketch of Jack the Ripper. So if it was Holmes dealing with it again, distraction is plausible, but it would have been his offside who was doing it, whoever he was. Because that would make sense, because Holmes wouldn't give a damn if he got caught. Because he's a psychopath. He wouldn't give a shit. Excuse my language. He wouldn't give a damn. So that's what I forgot to mention in regards to Holmes. But I still don't think it was him. And said if he had something to do with it, it would have been his offside who was doing it. Because there were people working with Holmes. And so it's plausible that he actually ordered someone to go along and attack women in Whitechapel. So it is plausible. Alright, other type of suspects. There was also another suspect called Leather Apron. Leather Apron was a butcher. And he was quite often walking around Whitechapel with blood all over him. He was seen day in and day out covered in blood. Because he was a butcher. And because he was a butcher, no one thought anything bad about it. It was normal. Like if you go to modern day butchers today, especially if you go to the markets, they're covered in blood. No, they did not bog somebody off in the back of the butcher shop. We hope not, but they've been butchering animals. And of course the blood of the animals stains their clothes. And him being a butcher, a lot of police believe the leather apron was, you definitely would have fit, because I believe that they would have believed that because the way these women were mutilated, that they would have to have anatomical knowledge. Mainly because, like, for example, I think it was Polly Nichols. I could be wrong, but I think it was Polly Nichols. I know it definitely wasn't this stride. It definitely wasn't her. But anyway, with one of the victims, they found out that the uterus was removed, along with her kidneys. But here's the thing. The bladder still contained urine. The bladder wasn't damaged. And that's the reason why they believe that somebody with anatomical skills would have done that, especially that these murders were done in about 9 minutes. But even people in the field say that even for a trained surgeon who perform hysterectomies, that's when they remove the uterus and just leaving the ovaries intact, even they have to be extremely careful when performing this surgery, and they have to take their time because the bladder and the uterus are very, very close together. Extremely close, and it's very, very easy to nick and damage the bladder. That's the reason why they believe that this person had some medical knowledge or knew about their anatomy. And there was a guy who was going around Whitechapel who called himself Leather Apron, and he was pretty much a pimp. Pimp were people who pretty much had girls, and they would pimp them out. So in other words, they would go and make them get clients, and they get a chunk of what they earn. And this person apparently was very, very aggressive, very, very angry. And at one of the murders, they found a leather apron. Hence the name Leather Apron. But when they tortured this person, they found that he had nothing to do with it. That he was innocent. And the only reason why they called it Leather Apron was, once again, as I said before, and they found a leather apron at the scene of one of the murders. But it was later being identified as belonging to one of the people who was residing in that particular building. And it had nothing to do with the murders. So, yeah, that was quite, interesting. There's been, a couple of others as well. Like there was one, I can't remember his name. But, he was looked into. He escaped from Broadmoor, and I know for a fact he was in Broadmoor. He escaped from Broadmoor, went all the way to the US, and then he lived in the US for nearly 30 to 40 years. But wherever he went, women were turning up dead. And he was in New York, he was in Texas, I think he was also in New Orleans. He was all over the place in the US. And women were turning up dead. And they were being murdered same way as over in London. And he eventually, when he was very, very old, returned to London and actually turned himself in directly to Broadmoor and said that he was Jack the Ripper. But because he was an old man and quite senile, no one really paid attention to it. I can't remember his name, but I found that was very, very interesting. And there was another one when I just watched, I think his name was Hockenheimen or something like that. He was a German. And they believe that he killed 2 women in New York. And he was caught with the second woman. I can't remember this lady's name. And he was actually caught, tried, and found guilty of murder. And he was actually sent to Sing Sing and was sent to Old Sparky. And they believe that he could easily be Jack the Ripper. Because there's a lot of evidence to say that Jack the Ripper migrated from England to the US. Because the crimes were that gruesome that they stuck out. So there is a connection between, these crimes. And same as there was another one. This one is another suspect to do with my own country. Once again, I can't remember this person's name either. He murdered his wife, I think 4 children, by, he slit their throats. I think he also bashed them as well, and then buried them in the courtyard. And they weren't found until he decided to do the same thing with his second wife in Melbourne, Australia. And then he fled to Adelaide. Adelaide, Australia. But then they found the body, stuffed it in a chimney, I think. And he got sent back to Melbourne, and he was sent to Melbourne jail where he was hung for murder. And that's how they found his family brutally murdered over in the UK. So there's, definitely plenty of suspects. Plenty of suspects. And then you also got Ted Kaczynski. He was, if you would call it now, modern day society, you would say he'd probably be a paranoid schizophrenic. He was insane. And like I said, he had mental issues, and everyone in his family, strongly believed that he was guilty of these crimes, and the police actually helped them, and the police actually believe it was Kaczynski, and they actually sent him to a nut house where he lived the rest of his life. Alright, this is the end of part 3. We're going to continue with part 4 in the next video. If you like these videos, please like and subscribe. Have a great day, and blessed be.